I'm Robert, and this is Haslip Cycle Works. Today, we're going to talk about increasing not only our air volume, but our CFM to use for our long cuts, and then later down the road, our CNC cuts on our plasma. Right now I have a 21 gallon, 2.5 horse, single stage air compressor from Harborfreight. I'll put a link down in the description. But I started noticing while I was playing with the plasma cutter on the plasma table that I was running out of air. Only on those longer cuts. The short little cuts here and there, no problem, keeps up just fine. But I know that when I start cutting out more intricate pieces, I'm going to have to stop and wait and let the air compressor catch up. Essentially, the duty cycle on the air compressor is not up to par with the plasma cutter. There's two ways we could fix that. One, we could either hold on to or sell our current compressor and purchase a much larger compressor. That's rather cost prohibitive, and the way we like to do things here at Haslip Cycle Works is much like you guys. We don't have an unlimited budget. We can't just go out and buy whatever we want. The quick and easy, cheap way to increase not only our capacity but CFM would be to purchase a second compressor. The exact same thing that we already have. But then you run into an issue of, okay, I've got two compressors. So essentially 42 gallons being filled by two 2.5 horse compressors. Doubles our CFM. I think that puts us up around 9 or 10. I'm sure that the ratings that they give are a little inflated here. So we'll take those as you will. How do we combine the two compressors so they act as one? I've seen a lot of videos and a lot of people where they'll just use a little T-fitting, and you have one compressor running in, another running in, and then you feed your devices. I, like most of you, I'm sure have one of these sitting in your garage. Well, one of these is going to be our central hub, if you will, for our air supply. So having two compressors is a great idea. It's the cheaper route to go. It's the easier route to go. It takes up a lot more floor space, but they're not that big. But it also adds an element of difficulty to the setup. So say we have our two air compressors and they're running. I need to backtrack. So delete everything before this. Go back to these thing. So I'm sure, like most of you, I also have one of these in my garage. And this is going to act as our central hub. It is a 10 gallon, I know it's upside down, but 10 gallon portable air tank. The purpose of this is to fill up with your shop compressor and then keep in your truck or around the shop or whatever, and it's your portable compressed air unit. So you can go out in the driveway, fill up a car tire, fill up a bicycle tire, motorcycle tire, soccer ball, whatever it is, and put it in the trunk and fill it up, put it in the trunk, and use that as your emergency air inflation. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have the trunk space to be carrying this big thing around. You can get these really cheap, Harbor Freight, pretty much anywhere, Amazon. This one was given to me. It's in good shape. It's got a couple little rust spots, but it's just a little bit of surface rust, nothing to be concerned about. The gauge, which is very cheap, is still intact. Our Schrader valve is still intact. Our hose is still in good shape, and it has the tire valve filler attachment. We're going to keep that on here. We're going to keep this handle here too. We could probably use this later on to hook some tools to or whatever. So the goal here is to tee our 2 compressors into this, and then out of this we'll supply our shop air. The compressors that I'm using have 1/4-inch air outlets. So we're going to add 2 1/4-inch air inlets on this guy, but we're also going to add 2 ball valves. The purpose of the ball valves is if I have to take one of the compressors down, or it fails, or I need to move it, I can shut the ball valve and the other compressor can continue to run and fill this up along with its own tank. Then we don't have to disconnect our shop air supply. That, eventually I'm going to run to a reel, and then we're going to have some quick disconnect ports for the sandblaster and the plasma table and a couple spots around the shop so that we have air wherever we may need it. I won't have to mess with any of that. What we're going to do with this is we're going to make new feet for it. We're going to add our ports to it, and then we're going to mount this on the wall. And then our 2 compressors will tee into this, and then our shop air supply, which will go up the wall and to a reel and all over the place, we'll add that bung as well. And I'm also going to put a drain at the bottom, because as you know, unless you live in like Arizona, somewhere where it's very arid, here in Virginia it's very humid right now, so we get a lot of condensation built up in our compressor tanks, and we have to drain them regularly. Well, this essentially is going to be another compressor tank. We want to be able to remove any moisture that's in this that gets built up so that it doesn't rust from the inside out. So we'll add a small 1/4-inch MPT fitting to the bottom, and then one of the little drain valves. So instead of having 2 compressors and 2 21-gallon tanks for a total of 42 gallons, we now have 2 21-gallon tanks and a 10-gallon tank for a total of 52 gallons. Our CFM is going to increase because we have 2 compressors supplying the air, and to better facilitate high volume air usage, we're going to have 1/4-inch coming in and then 3/8 coming out at the top of the tank to our shop air supplies. So this should work really well. Quick, easy way to do it. And everything is going to have the ball valves on it so that we can shut off one compressor, just run on one, do maintenance, whatever. And then the shop air supply also will have a ball valve at the top to shut off supply at the shop air, just in case, for whatever reason, a hose burst or something, we can just hit that and gets rid of the danger. So I'll show you the parts that we got to add to this to build that. We'll call it an air hub. How about that? That sounds good. Let me show you the parts that we got for that, and then we'll get to modifying this to become our air hub. So to start off with, our MPT fittings that we're going to have to add to that 10-gallon tank. I've got 3 1/4-inch MPTs and 1 3/8 MPT fitting. I get all my bungs, yeah, it's funny, bungs, from bungking.com. They have everything in stock that you could ever want. They sell not only just MPT stuff, but metric threads and standard threads for gas tanks, for motorcycles, for oil tanks. They even sell oil tank kits. Not to mention you can get any of the fittings that they sell, or bungs, whatever you want to call them. You can get them in aluminum, steel, and in this case, stainless steel. They're very competitively priced. These are the stepped versions so that we can drill a hole and then rest the bung on the lip on the tank, and that'll give us a nice area to TIG this in with. If you have any need for any sort of bungs or fittings or anything like that, weld in, screw in, whatever the case may be, check them out. They've been awesome. I've used them for years. Never ever have I ever had a problem with them. And then we have the parts that will go from the air tank to the compressors and the supplies. So we have 2 1/4-inch MPT ball valves. That way we can shut off the supplies for the compressors to the air hub. 2 of these. And I tried to do this without adding a whole bunch of fittings. So if you notice, there's male on one end, female on the other. The MPT bungs that we got from Bungking have a female 1/4 inch, so this will thread right in there. No need to stack a bunch of stuff up, because the more connections you have, the more prone to leaks you are. So I have 2 of these. Then for the shop supply side, I have a 3/8 ball valve. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it with the male and female on there time of purchase. And these all came from Harborfreight, by the way. And a couple sort of fittings, 3/8, 1/4 inch, just in case I have some more, but you know, these are always good to keep in your toolbox just in case. Our 1/4 inch MPT drain valve, so we can drain the condensation out of our air hub. And then 2 leader hoses, 1/4 inch by 3 foot, to go from our air compressors to our air hub. You don't want anything that moves a lot. You don't want a solid connection to. You wouldn't want to run hard lines from the compressor to this air hub, because the compressors sit there and shake. They may not walk across the floor, but they do sit there and shake. And most metals are going to work harden, so the more you flex them back and forth, the harder they get. Eventually they become brittle, and with 120 or so PSI in it, that could burst. Not a good time. So to avoid that, use some inexpensive air hose. They're called hose leads, also from Harborfreight. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to measure, just to make sure, I'm going to measure the steps in our bungs and go ahead and drill the holes in our air tank for the air hub, clean the powder coat off, and then we're going to build a set of legs to go on it that we can attach to the wall. So I've gone ahead and measured our stepped bungs, and for the 1/4 inch, in our case, the diameter is 5/8. So I'm going to start with a small bit, use our stepping bit, and drill our 3 holes for our 1/4 inch MPT fittings to 5/8. And a little tip for you guys: when you know how big you need to go with these step bits, take a Sharpie and draw, just fill it in to the size above what you need. So as you're drilling, if it comes to this black line, you stop. You're good to go. These tend to get a little aggressive, so you may step right past the size you wanted to go to without even knowing it. A little black Sharpie or whatever your color choice may be, and a little acetone later wipes it right off. So we drill a hole. Now let's take our 1/4 inch step stainless bung, make sure it fits. Fits in there pretty good. There we go. So what I'll do now is I'll drill our other 2 holes. Drain must be in the bottom, of course, because the water's going to collect in the bottom. This is going to be the bottom. You might want to put your compressor inputs a little higher, just so that when the air comes in, the condensation has a chance to fall and not get sucked right up the feed line. In our case, the feed line will be in the exact same spot, but on the top. Just makes sense because we're going to mount this to the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and get those other holes drilled, get our area cleaned off. I'm going to tack these in with the TIG. To mount our additional storage tank, and we definitely want 2 U-shaped feet on it, 1 on each end. That'll be nice and stable. It won't be quite wide enough to mount on 16-inch center studs. So what we'll do is we'll make our metal feet, we'll attach them, we'll drill holes or screws to run through, and then we'll screw that to a piece of plywood, and then we'll screw the plywood to the wall into the studs. To make the legs, I have an 1/8 inch thick by 1 1/4 inch by 36 inch piece of flat stock. I'm going to cut it in half, and going off of the legs that are already on the tank, we know that it's 9 inches wide. So we'll mark out 9 inches of that, and the rest of it we'll use as the short side of the leg. Just going to cut it with a bandsaw and bend it using our vise, little mini vise brake that we made a few episodes back. Made our new feet to mount our air tank to the wall with. We can go ahead and remove these two. I'm just going to use an angle grinder with a cutoff disc, and then come back with a flap wheel and just kind of bring it back down, and then we'll see where we want to mount our new feet, and we will go ahead and clear off, I want to say this is probably powder coat. Pull the powder coat off with the flap disc, get nice bare shiny metal, and get our new legs, the ends that we're going to weld on, cleaned up and ready to go, and we'll tack them to our tank. So I've gotten our bungs all welded in place and shot a coat of rattle can red on it. As you can tell, it kind of goes from gloss at the bottom to flat up top, and that's because here in Virginia it can be nice and sunny and 70 1 second, and then almost 50 degrees and foggy and misting the next. So shot the paint on this, left it outside to dry, came back, and the weather had changed and it essentially washed the gloss off the paint. Not too worried about it. This side will be facing out, and I'm going to sticker bomb this, kind of like I've done to my welding helmets and my toolboxes. So if you've got any stickers you'd like to send me, shoot me an email, haslipcycleworks@gmail.com, and let me know you'd like to send me some stickers. I'll try to keep them weld and car and fabrication and kind of go-kart, mini bike related if we could. But I'd be more than happy if you've got a brand or something that you would like to promote. As long as you put out a decent product and you're running a decent business, I don't mind throwing your sticker or logo or whatever on some of the stuff here in the shop. You know, there were a few blemishes with the paint. Yeah. Can't wait to get my powder coat oven done. Issues like this will be in the past. So the footage of me welding these in and the footage of me painting this screwed that up somehow. When I went to go review it, I only had 3 seconds. So for some reason the camera decided that it was done filming, and that's all it gave me was 3 seconds. Completely unusable. Batting 1,000 here. But now that I've got this done and it's painted and everything's in, and as you can see, I've got the legs are welded in. There are notches. So what I need to do now is cut my piece of plywood, find the studs in the wall, and paint the piece of plywood. I think I'm going to go black to kind of contrast the red. And as you notice, the red and black is kind of a theme of mine. Get the plywood on the wall, put my screws into the plywood that this will then kind of slot down onto, tighten those up, and then we'll start putting our ball valves and all our assorted fittings on our tank and start plumbing our compressors to the tank. So I've gone ahead and cut my 3/4 inch piece of plywood to size. I used the jigsaw with a wood cutting blade and just round the corners and the edges over with a little bit of sandpaper, and then shot a coat of black paint on it. And you can tell how humid it is out here. It goes to show why most of the episodes on the channel lately have been tool and garage oriented. Wanted to get some of this stuff done and up and working in the garage so that I can continue the work in here when it gets a little colder out. So what I'm trying to do is hurry up and get some of these tools and other things done in the garage so that when it does get cold out and we can't have the door open or we can't do anything outside, I'll have everything I need already in place and we can knock some serious projects out. And of course, I can't be painting stuff in the garage with the door closed. Trying to get all the painting done and all the sawdust stuff done and get all my equipment hooked up so that we can continue to make episodes for you guys and get some content out. So you'll start seeing, as the weather starts to decline, the projects will shift further away from garage, like tools and garage projects, into more of the bike build. We haven't seen the Vulcan in a little bit, so we'll get back on that. And I got plenty of parts for it, but I need to get this stuff out of the way first. Just kind of an explanation as to why you're seeing different content on the channel. So we've got our board painted and cut, good to go. So what I need to do now is measure and drill and countersink for the screws we're going to use to go into our studs in the wall. And then we need to put our tank on here and mark out where we need to pre-drill. So I'm going to get that done and bring you back when I'm actually getting ready to mount it on the wall. So I've gone ahead and marked my stud locations. They're usually 16 inches on center, but you know, it depends on the time of day that your house was built and if it was on a Friday before quitting time, whether that's accurate or not. So I've anchored it through the plywood with our countersunk screws, through the drywall, and into our studs. We made sure that our board is level, and I've run our stainless screws into our pre-marked locations for our tank, so it should just go up against that and drop down. I mean, it snug goes down a little bit, but yeah, can't do that with one hand, so I'll bring you right back. All right, so I slipped it on and it was a little loose, so I snugged up those machine screws and I had to put some force on it to get it to slide down. It's mounted there. So it just slides down on that, and then the weight of the tank itself is going to keep it locked down. Doesn't stick out from the wall any further than the compressors do. It's in a good spot. Can still swing the door open for the parts blaster. Yeah, so our tank, or air hub, wherever we're going to deem this thing, is on the wall. Let's see, there's the port there, and the port on the bottom. It's on there nice and snug, it's not going to come off. Then we can go ahead and start planning for our hard lines to go up to our hose reel to supply air to the rest of the shop. And we can go ahead and start plumbing our 2 compressors into the tank, put our ball valves on, put our drain valve, the ball valve on the top, and then the fitting and the hose and gauge that came with the tank. I'll put that back on, but I'll clean up all the threads and wrap them in tape, the Teflon tape, and get them all installed. And I'll bring you back once that's done and kind of show you how it's all plumbed together. Alright, so I've used my Teflon tape and got my drain valve in, my 2 fill ball valves in, one there, the other here, and the cool thing about these ball valves is up is closed, down is closed, and aiming down the hose is open, so you know it works both ways. I've got the air pressure gauge that came with the tank and the Schrader valve style hose attached. That'll be good for just filling up small stuff here and there. It'll give us a good idea of what we're looking at for tank pressure. I've also got the 3/8 ball valve. This one's a little simpler. Up is on, down is off. Doesn't interfere with anything. We've got the 3/8 male to male brass fitting in because the bung is female and the ball valve is female. At this point, all I need to do is hook up my leader hoses from these ball valves down to the quick connects on the compressors. Okay, so I've got our 2 leader hoses that go from the air hub down to our compressors. I swapped my leader hoses for the ones with the swivel built in and installed one of the quick connects to the end of it, just in case I need to move them around. I don't want to risk breaking anything. And the swivel hoses were actually 2 feet longer than the original leader hoses I had, so, and for $1 more. So I went ahead and got those. Both compressors are plumbed up, as you can see. This is the brand new compressor. This is the one that I've had for a little bit. So I checked the oil on both of them, had to top that one off. This one was still good. And what I'm going to do is run this one compressor and get about 20 psi in here, and then check all the fittings for leaks. And then I'll shut this compressor off, and I will close that ball valve and open this one and let this compressor run and kind of break in and take it to probably 50 or 60 and see where we're sitting as far as leaks go. Right now I don't have power on this wall yet. I need to run my conduit and put my box on the wall and put my breakers in. That's going to be out of the scope of this video, but I just want to make sure that our air hub's going to work. Once I'm satisfied with that, address any issues if there are any. But I'm going to go ahead and turn you guys off right now and run these compressors, make sure everything's good, and I'll show you the final result. Fixed all the little leaks I had. Still have one really small leak right here. Probably just need to take it apart and put more Teflon tape on it. If I crank down on it anymore, it may break. So yeah, I'll fix that. Let both compressors run, and we're sitting at about 60 psi. Now all I need to do is run from our top 3/8 valve up to supply everything in the shop that needs air. I think that's really going to be a separate episode. If I even do an episode on it, I may just post on social media once it's all done. But yeah, guys, that's it. That's how you connect 2 compressors together. And I will warn you though, when you go to wire up your compressors, make sure that you have them on their own 20 amp breakers. 120 amp breaker per compressor, because when they're running, they're not drawing that much, but on initial startup they can spike up pretty high. I don't think a 15 amp breaker is going to do it. So 20 amp for this guy, 20 amp for that guy, separate runs all the way to the breaker box on 20 amp rated outlets and 20 amp plus rated wire, and we'll put that in some conduit just to keep it nice and clean. Yeah, look forward to some of those social media posts where we actually start hooking stuff up. We got to get our plasma machine hooked up to that supply, and of course I got to hang the air dryer and everything up, and we got to get our media blaster hooked up, and then a couple other spots down the way there, and one on the other side by the weld table, and then the reel will go on the ceiling. So stay tuned for those posts. But till next time, guys, get up, get out there and do it.